All right, we should be back. I really do apologize for the technical issues, but that is the Prince police, which is not a problem. I'm so used to that, and that's So we're going to carry on. So we were talking about Miles Davis, Miles Davis's appearance on the New Year's Eve show, and I was wondering, like, how did you guys feel about his performance that evening? During that song.
When Miles came up on stage, it was like Eric and I looked at each other. Yeah, this is what we've been waiting for all our lives, to play with Miles. Are you kidding?
Yeah, it was a big deal for everybody, really. I mean, it's a real rare treat to have that happen.
Well, I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. Prince had with the band a set of hand cues that he would give us. One was throwing his fist up in the air, waving his hand one way, and we had preordained riffs that the whole band would play. Whenever he gave us a signal of that, it could be in the middle of a up-tempo song, could be in the middle of a ballad, didn't matter. We knew the whole band would go into one of these riffs, depending on what the signal was. And Miles was playing. Prince was turned towards us, so he had his back to the audience. And Prince, very, very quickly after Miles started playing, Prince threw up his hand to give us one of the cues, and nobody in the band paid him any mind. Wow. We just ignored him because everybody was kind of just
we were cute on him.
And of course, Prince, not surprisingly, Prince took umbrage at that. So see, he looked, he threw up his arm and nothing, and was like, hey, basically to remind us that might be Miles, but I'm still the one signing your paycheck. So at that point, it was like we were all looking and said, oh, what do you want now? Okay. So from then on, we were back
stuck with them,
on the script. But the only other thing personally was that I always regretted is as Matteo Bliss mentioned, we both knew so many of the horn lines, particularly from this period of Miles's music, the electric period in the early to mid 70s. And there was a particular line that we used to play a lot in our band, Taking Names and stuff, that we would throw in whenever we could. And I was desperately trying to find the right moment to just give a little nod to Matt, and we would play this line. And the moment came,
we knew it was going to blow. It would blow Miles away.
Well, I kind of feel that Miles might have given us a dirty look, because Miles was like, "What? Why are you playing that old shit?"
It was his line. Yeah, it was his line.
But the moment came, and I wasn't quick enough. So I never did it, and I always regretted that.
Yeah,
that's it. Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure he would have looked at us and said,
"Oh, I'm sure he would have.
You guys really don't know your shit. Did your history with him."
I've also mentioned this about Matt. Earlier that year, I think it was April of that year, 1987, Miles had a gig with his band in Minneapolis, and he came in the day before in order to spend the evening with Prince. And so Miles came to our rehearsal. Now, this was before Paisley Park had opened, so we were in the middle of the rehearsals for the Sign of the Times tour. But we were still rehearsing in a warehouse in the suburb of Eden Prairie, Minnesota. And Miles came by that afternoon, and that was the first time that I had gotten a chance to actually meet Miles, the same with everybody in the band. And I just remember this scene that there was a moment there where, Matt, you were sitting next to Miles, and you were showing him your trumpet rig, and he was showing. I don't remember if he had his trumpet with him. I don't think
he had a tape recorder. He had a tape recorder.
Yep. And anyway, I just remember this picture in my mind of the two of you sitting there talking trumpet. And I just wish cameras were verboten, around Prince or anything like that. But I wish I had a picture, because I'm looking at one of my closest, dearest friends in the world sitting next to Miles Davis, and they're talking trumpet. Would have been, I mean, like I say, I'm very fortunate to be able to call people like David Sanborn and Branford Marcellus very good friends of mine. And when David and me get together, well, unless you're interested in hearing talk about saxophone, you better leave the room, because that's all we're going to talk about. And the same with me and Branford. So here's a situation where Matt it's Miles frickin' Davis.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that evening, Prince invited me to join them for dinner at Prince's home, which was something that I was always, very grateful for Prince to have invited me to join them. And I started talking to Miles about the Ag Harda Band, and which had some critical success, but was not particularly popular with many of the Miles Davis fans, because it was an extremely avant-garde, hard funk band, which had little or no similarity to most of the jazz bands he had ever had. So by then, Miles, a lot of the more conservative jazz fans had kind of written Miles off. But Matt and me, we loved that band. And so I'm talking to Miles about it, and excuse my French, but Miles looked at me and said, "Egg, you like that band?" And I said, "Oh man, you have no idea." He said, "Excuse me, you're the only motherfucker I ever heard that liked that band."
Yeah,
that's exactly what he said to me.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's perfect. So apropos for him.
Yeah. Well, let me add onto that. I did hear, I guess, along with the rest of the band, that Miles was coming into this in that afternoon. I said, I got to be there, and I knew Eric was going to be there. And there's like a lounge that went into like the main part of the warehouse. And I was sitting on a stool, like a bar stool, right when he went in. Miles walked right beside me, and Prince was recording a drum track, and he went up to Prince right away, and Prince said, "Hang on, give me a session, give me a couple minutes. I want to finish this drum track, and then we'll hang out." And Miles came over and sat right next to me. I said, "Oh man, it doesn't get any better than this." Miles is sitting next to me, and he reached out his hand to me. He said, "My name's Miles Davis." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, my name's Atlanta Bliss. I'm the trumpet player with Prince." You know what he said? He said, "I like what you played in that last record." Wait, Miles liked what I played? My career is complete.
There you go.
Wow.
There you go.
We talked about the keyboards and the drum setup, and how everything we did with all the electronics and stage stuff, and what was the new keyboard that you were playing back then? The sampler?
The Fairlight.
The Fairlight, yeah.
Yeah.
He was blown away with that.
Not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a nice conversation. That was very, very cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like for It's Gonna Be a Beautiful Night, there was no rehearsal with Miles.
No.
He just walked up on stage.
He was there. That was it. Yeah.
Wow.
It's so cool to hear the way you guys talk about him. It's sort of the way us fans sort of feel about Prince when we talk about him to other people. But it's great to hear, like she said earlier, we looked at you guys as like, this superhero group, super musicians, and so to actually just to hear who you admire and
this is
I mean, it's awesome to hear that, man.
Yeah, for me it was like Miles and James Brown.
Yeah.
Now I had the what was nice for me is I had the opportunity, because I knew James Brown since I was like 14 years old and grew up around him and the band and all those guys, Maceo Parker and Fred Wesley and Clyde Stubblefield and Jimmy Nolan and all those guys. I knew those guys when I was a kid. So
Eric's flexing. I love it. Now, let me ask you this, Eric, real quick. So, I mean, coming from something like that, how do you honestly view Prince? Like, when you come into it, are you impressed? Or are you know what I mean? Like, you've been around some of these.
You have to understand the context in which I'm saying this, and a lot of this has to do with just personal taste. I had very little awareness of Prince's music before I met him, because there were certain songs of his that I was familiar with, but really just a few. On the day that I met Prince, I could probably have told you the titles of 4 songs of his. And I have never been a huge fan of Prince's music. But you're not going to find a bigger fan of Prince the musician.
Say that.
I wasn't there because I was supposed to like his music or love it. I was there to play it. And that was the basis of our relationship. I was never particularly interested in his persona per se. Even as an entertainer, as fabulous as an entertainer as he wasn't necessarily something that would necessarily have appealed to me, just as what I'm interested in music and entertainment. I didn't seek a gig with Prince. It was an opportunity that fell in my lap. And it would have been foolish of me, particularly at the time that it did, for me not to have pursued it to see where it was going to go, with absolutely no expectations or illusions or presumptions of what was going to come of it. The single most significant part of my relationship with Prince had nothing to do with his music. It was, for me, the fact that he found something of value, not only in what I contributed to his music, but what I had to do with my own music, and the opportunity that he gave me by signing me to his record company and allowing me to pursue my own musical aspirations was the primary thing that I will always be grateful to him for. So, yeah.
Yes,
and the fact that at the time that he asked me to suggest a trumpet player, and knowing that Atlanta was, the guy, and the fact that the opportunity to, for him and I to continue our relationship in the context of, and be able to serve Prince's music with what we had already known.
Still do y'all, still what you do.
Was certainly made what was a very enjoyable gig even more enjoyable for that, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, Times Squared is actually one of my favorite records, and I play it often. And I really love the LP record that you did with St. Paul Peterson. And I had the opportunity to see you guys perform in Minneapolis at the Ice House. And it was an incredible gig. I mean, it was fantastic.
I got to tell you, Paul Peterson has turned into, for me, maybe one of the most significant and closest musical collaborators I've ever had the opportunity to work with. It's ironic because when I first met him, he was just a 19-year-old kid who was going to be the singer in a band called The Family. And like 25, 30 years later, I realized that this kid, I mean, the Peterson family, is like the first family of music is you've got all of them.
In Minneapolis,
And they're all, I mean, Patty and Linda are tremendous singers. Billy is just a world-class jazz bass player. Is also a good keyboard player. Ricky is a first call keyboard player. It was Prince that recommended that I use Ricky on some things on Times Square instead of Prince, because I had asked Prince to come in and solo on a couple things on that, and he said, "I'm listening to what you're doing, Eric, and I'm not the guy. You need to call Ricky."
Wow.
And but I got to tell you, of all of them, Paul is the youngest. That's the cat. I mean, they're all fabulous, but I mean, as far as a conceptualist and a creative thing that Paul has got, oh my God, I'm looking and hearing the shit that Paul, and I said, where does this shit come from? Because Paul doesn't have the references that I do. So I'm listening to what he's bringing, and I'm saying, well, I know where this comes from, but he doesn't. It's just coming from him, and it's very, very funny to me. Because it's like, I can tell him, I said, man, I'm hearing all of this stuff and what you're bringing. He said, who are those guys? I don't know what they. And I said, Paul, that's cool. Keep it like that.
Well, and Eric, even before you met him, I was the guy instrumental in getting him his audition with The Time.
That's right.
And to be in the Purple Rain movie. Wow. They were asking me, do you know anybody that might be a good guy to replace, Jimmy Jam or blah?
Yeah.
And they went, Paul Peterson.
Yeah.
Here's the guy. Get him. And then, of course, Ricky, I'll just, as another aside, Ricky actually had my job before I did. Prince hired him to be the first keyboard player before me. Wow. The only reason I got in is because Ricky bowed out after doing it. He wanted to do other things.
Yeah.
So
I never heard that.
Yeah. Story.
No, Ricky is a free spirit.
Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, I mean, I think, and of course, the interesting thing is that Prince understood that about Ricky, because many years later, Ricky ended up doing a lot of producing for Prince.
Yeah, he worked at Paisley Park. He had a partner engineer that worked with him, Tom Tucker, and Tom became the manager of Paisley Park, and then Ricky worked out of there too. This was after my tenure. Ricky came back full circle.
Ricky was the producer on Most Beautiful Girl in the World and a bunch of other things at that time. So that relationship was always there.
Yeah.
So Eric, I kind of want to go back a little bit, and then I'm going to ask this question actually to all of you. I mean, of Prince's entire catalog that you had the privilege of playing live, like what was your favorite song to play? I'll start with Eric.
Wow, interesting question. There was a little horn riff that and well, there's no way I can say this without it sounding very self-serving, because obviously the things that are favorite things for me to play are often the shit that I wrote.
Okay.
There was a song that we were doing on the parade gigs. We were doing the song "You Need Another Lover." Which happened to be a song that of Prince's that I really, really like a lot. It's one of my, favorite songs of his. And he came to me while we were rehearsing, and there's a little break in there, and he said, "Why don't you do a horn solo? I'll have you solo during that break." And I was already soloing on almost every frickin' song in the set by then, and I thought that. Excuse my false modesty. I said, the last thing that anybody needs to hear right now is another saxophone solo. I said, why don't you give me an opportunity? So let me write something there. And he said, cool. I don't remember if I asked him. I went home that night and I said, so I took something in my mind, I wrote it out for me and Bliss to play. And it was something that kind of lays on the horn, not too terribly difficult, but it's a bitch on a trumpet, and I knew it was, and it was 8 bars long. It was 8 or 9 bars long, and I brought in the next morning. I said to Bliss, I said, "Let's get in a little early. I got something to show you for this." And Matt had it in like about 5 minutes. I mean, it
was from playing together all those years. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. So
but the thing was that we never had to guess about our phrasing. On the LoveSexy tour, there were times when Matt and me were playing 50 feet apart from each other. And we never had to guess about where our phrasing was, because Matt knows every weakness that I have as a saxophone player. So there's a harmony there where Matt said, "Oh my God, Eric's got to play that high B. He can't play that note and tune to save his life. So I know how to adjust mine so I can at least make Eric sound like he knows how to play this freaking horn."
Well, I never thought about that.
So. But anyway, on this song, but the cool thing was, and I'm sure Matt Fink will attest to this, that song became a feature for Lisa because of the particular way that Lisa soloed. And Lisa, as a soloist, isn't like a jazz soloist in that she does a lot of fast, one-note lines. She's an orchestrator. And her soloing is just very McCoy Tyner-ish, actually, in harmonic vocabulary. And that was my favorite part of any gig I ever, of those, tours that we did. And the little line that we played that I written would set her up. And then she would come, Prince would go off stage, change clothes. And Lisa was soloing. And then I had another set of horn lines that Matt, Bliss and I would play behind Lisa. And we were kind of free to put them wherever they were. And I would just kind of listen to Lisa and try to find the right spot to play these. I suspect there were very many nights where Lisa was probably looking at me and said, "You're going to play it here? I mean, really here?" But whatever. So that was something that I always remembered liking.
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Bliss? What was your favorite song to play live with Prince?
To play live?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess my favorite thing is, we did Power Fantastic. We never played that live, but just that recording. And I don't know if you're going to get into that song, but that song is takes music to where it's supposed to be. So emotional with that song.
It's a great
And
song.
the way it all started out was, well, everyone knows, you know, you've all heard that probably 100 times. And it just starts out open, and Prince says, "Okay, let's go." And all of us that were in the studio at that time, we came together. Our musicality came together and created something very cool. And then, you know, people mistaken me for Miles Davis.
Yeah.
And what a compliment that is to me. That was another highlight. But I'll tell you the horn parts that I really liked, and that's the controversy horn parts.
Yes.
It just felt right in the groove there.
You know, we did it on Controversy the first year, but after that we shifted that, and that became the horn part that we used to play on Kiss.
Yeah.
That too. Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So what about you, Dr. Fink? What was your favorite song to play live with Prince?
Well, I like Computer Blue a lot. You know, that and When Doves Cry, those two, just because I love the bridge that Prince's father wrote, the melody in there, and then all the other little parts on Computer Blue. I like that. And then of course the solo at the end of When Doves Cry is always fun to play, that classical thing. And you know, and Prince, you know, he wrote that and played it in the studio, but he kind of cheated by slowing the tape down to half speed and then writing the part slowly and then speeding the tape back up. So it sounds like that really quick and high-pitched funny string, which is actually probably an Oberheim synthesizer doing that. So I had to play that at that speed and learn it. So,
I had to learn it from you because I was playing that line too.
That's right. Later on, you joined me on subsequent tours.
Yeah, so I walk over and said, "Okay, Fink, let me get the real deal here." So
yeah, and I never played it the same twice, but I tried to with Eric going forward but
it was so fast that you know no one was gonna know.
Right. So, right. So anyway, a lot of fun.
So there's a question from the chat, and I would like to ask Dr. Fink and Eric, tell us the difference in rehearsals for the Revolution versus the new band for a Sign of the Times. Difference?
Good question.
Not much of a difference, really.
Not really.
His work, his work ethic was always the same, and the amount of time he put into things on a daily basis. I mean, it was more than a 9-to-5 job. It was, you know. Yeah. You were there. I always showed up early because I'd go over stuff or have to learn something I didn't get at home because I was, you know, something got in the way. And then I'd have to be ready because if I wasn't ready, if none of us was ready for rehearsal, it was like, okay, everybody leave the room. Doctor, work on
oh wow,
yeah.
Hey Matt, what are you doing? You don't know your stuff today. Get out of here. What are you doing?
I think one thing that a story that I tell about that and remember this there. And there's no way that I could say this without, and I don't mean this critically of my dear friend Bliston, but we, you know, there were those of us that we're coming to work every day, so we're not like going to rehearsal particularly worrying about how we're dressed. We're wearing jeans and whatnot. Unfortunately, there was a day. Fortunately, there was a day where Atlanta walked in wearing a particular plaid shirt.
It was cool. It was a cool shirt.
It was a great plaid shirt. Unfortunately, the boss didn't think so. So the boss looked at Bliss and said, "How can I be funky looking at that shirt?" So
he said, "Where'd you get that shirt?" I said, "My mother got. I don't know. My mother got me. Good old mom." He said.
Right there you go. I was waiting for him to say, "Wherever you got it, take it back." But I'll give Sheila credit on that one. So after that rehearsal, Sheila said, "Well, that was jive." So Sheila says to us, "I said, everybody tomorrow wear a plaid shirt."
Wear a plaid shirt.
Yeah.
That was funny. All came in with plaid shirts. Sheila forgot. She had a really nice white blouse on, and we said, "Sheila, you're the one who started this. Where's your plaid shirt?" And she said, "Oh shit." I give her credit. She grabbed a magic marker and drew lines all over this shirt in a plaid pattern.
Wow.
So Prince comes in, he took one look at us, and he turned around and he walked out, and that was the end of So that,
but wait, hold on. And then go fast forward. See, this is what he does. He'll take this incident and turn it into something else positive. He did this song called The Morning Papers, like several years later.
Yeah.
And they all wore plaid shirts in the video, including him.
No kidding. No kidding. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize that's funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
He'll do that. He'll do it.
Oh, yeah.
Just to mess with people down the road.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the tour, the concert, the Sign of Times? So in that New Year's Eve show, we finally get to see, a performance of the song "Adore," which, for a lot of us fans, that song is, fantastic. But it seemed like it never really got played very often during the course of that show. Do you know of any reason of why you guys kind of kept that off the set list?
I don't even remember. I mean, I know that it was in the set for the Sign of the Times concert, but I don't remember what we did or did not do with it. I
remember playing it a lot.
Maybe it was the fact that we just didn't get to see it because we didn't get to see that tour here.
I haven't looked at the Sign of the Times concert film in a long time, so I couldn't even remember, specifically. But yeah, I mean, that was obviously it was a long version of the song that night on the New Year's Eve gig. By the time we were doing it in the LoveSexy show, it was part of a medley, so there was actually very little of the actual song that I think we were doing by then. I mean, Prince. I tell you something that always when we were putting the Sign of the Times tour together, the song "Strange Relationship" was in the show. And we did it at, we first gig that band did was the inevitable First Avenue gig where he introduced a new band. And we did "Strange Relationship," and Prince had a routine on it that, since we opened it up, we just vamped on that song for a while. Prince had a routine on it that involved Wally and Wally Safford and Greg Brooks, who were still there now with Cat instead of Jerome, who had left the band. And I got to be honest with you, the routine didn't work. It fell flat. And you could tell that it was a moment where all of a sudden, the people in the audience are kind of said, time to have a cigarette.
Interesting.
Being very aware of that, the next rehearsal, the entire song was now out of the show, and we never played that song in the show again.
That's crazy because
I asked Prince because everybody in the band, I remember everybody was real disappointed because we all loved that song. I mean, that song was great. And I remember I went up to Prince and I said, "Why in the world are you taking that out?" And he said to me, "It was too boring." And of course, my answer to that is, the song wasn't boring. It was that stupid ass routine you did on it was boring. Get rid of that, do something else. But the song is great. What the hell is, we never did it again.
Huh.
So those
I don't recall that, Eric.
That was because I was angry. I was like, this song, we're looking forward to that song.
I'm sure at the time I remember this, but at the moment,
but for whatever reason, it never came back in that show. Now, obviously, he did it years later, quite often.
It's interesting that you bring that up because I was going to ask you that question because that performance at First Avenue is my absolute favorite performance of "Strange Relationship," and I heard subsequent versions that you guys did only for rehearsal and never got in the show, but it actually changed. Like the First Avenue show was in March, and then there was I think you guys did a rehearsal before March that it did not sound like the same song, but there was something different about that version at First Avenue. And I wanted to ask, the prior to the First Avenue show, it sounded very much like the record. And then with First Avenue, it was funkier. It was a little slower. It was more drawn out. And then I heard a rehearsal afterwards, and you guys went back to kind of sounding like the record in terms of tempo and things of that nature. I'm wondering about that.
The routine that he came up with, and this is what I remember about it, was a thing where he had a rap of some sort that he had, rap of some sort, and it ended up with the phrase "a bucket of squirrel meat."
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? Remember that?
Squirrel meat.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people didn't quite identify with. Right? Excuse me, squirrel. You know, what does a bucket of squirrel meat have to do with anything that's going on with strangers or anything? And I think, and you know, after that, there was no more squirrel meat, and there was no more strange relationship.
That was actually one of my questions. What is squirrel meat?
I don't know.
Squirrel meat.
Yeah,
I always wondered what that was. I thought it was maybe a delicacy of some kind that he liked to have on the side.
I think that was just he liked the sound of the words.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking maybe it was some sort of cue for you guys that I don't know. And another thing that I wanted to ask, kind of similar to squirrel meat, was at the New Year's Eve performance, he says, "I got oil on my hands, and I'm a funky man," and he sort of repeats that over and over again. I got oil on my hands. So I was trying to like, I've never heard James Brown say something like that. Like, where is this coming from? So do you guys know what the reference to this oil on my hands is?
It could have been that he had oil on his hands. I mean, seriously, you know.
Well, you know, we tend to get hot and sweaty and oily when we're performing. So maybe that's what he was talking about. I don't know.
Yeah.
I tell you one, the
creative guy.
The smoke machines are oil based.
Yeah.
And sometimes oil leaks from them and can leak on the floor. And it could possibly be some gramming a guitar or something. You know, he was crawling around on the floor.
Yeah.
On certain things, and it could very well have been that he put his hand in like a little puddle of that oil. It could be, you know. So, you know, who knows?
Totally speculation, though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is an interesting question. Does Eric know why Atlanta wasn't asked to be in Madhouse but used on 6½?
That's a good question, because I sure would have loved to have had you in Madhouse.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been kick-ass.
There is Eric's band.
No, it wasn't Prince's band. That was Prince's band.
That was a Prince thing.
No, that was Prince's band. Particularly on the first album. You know, all of that was Prince. I was just plugged in like anything else that we did. Anyway. Yeah.
So this is actually one of the questions I wanted to ask. Is like, obviously I know that when you guys did the MTV performance, and you guys came in, you know, with the drums, and I know that I found out that's actually something that Sly Stone used to do. But like, who came up with, like, that was so powerful. I don't know if you guys knew how powerful that was for us in the States, because I was really disappointed that Prince didn't tour the States for a Sign of the Times. So this MTV performance was sort of like everything. And so can you guys talk a little bit about the MTV performance, and if you were disappointed that you guys didn't tour the States for Sign of the Times?
Well, yeah, I think we were a bit disappointed that we didn't do a U.S. tour. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Well, yeah. We know.
Oh no, so, yeah. You see, there are two tiers of pay in our contracts. We get paid an off-road salary and we get paid an on-road salary. And obviously the on-road salary is substantially more than the off-road salary. So instead of getting the on-road salary for another 3 or 4 months, we were just getting the off-road salary. So yeah, there was always an element of commerce.
And you know, as far as the snare drum idea, that's definitely all Prince. You know, coming on stage with that, and you know, that was his brainchild, as they say.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There's a couple questions there. They're sort of the same question, but for a different show. So Rodney is asking, for the Live Utrecht show, was anyone fined for the part on Beautiful Night where Prince said, "I didn't call horns"?
First of all, I have no recollection of that specifically.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
And no, he wouldn't find. He wasn't really finding people anymore at that.
Okay, he wasn't finding. So like when you guys missed the cue with Miles, it was.
And he really didn't fine you for doing that. Missing cues. It was more about if you were late for something.
The fines and that it's more of a threat than anything else.
Yeah, and it's a threat. And then but back on tours, you know, if you didn't make lobby call in time to make it to the next flight, you know, or whatever, and you were late and holding everybody up, you could get fined. It happened. It happened a few times to people.
Look, I mean, there were nights when Prince actually, you know, would mess something up himself on a gig.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just that it's our responsibility as a band to have his back. So if
make him look good.
If he screws something up, we're the ones responsible for making sure that nobody noticed other than us. So, you know.
But he never screwed up, Eric. Hardly ever. Pretty rare.
No, it absolutely was rare. But you know,
it did happen. But boy, you know, I very rare. It really.
Oh no, I can off the top of my head, I think remember one time,
maybe once or twice, tops my whole time with him.
Yeah,
where he hit a clam, you know, hit a note that was like, and he goes, I meant to do that, and again, play it.
No, there was one night we were doing Love Bazaar, and this was on the parade gigs, and in the sound check that afternoon, he made an edit that we weren't gonna. There was one part that we were the bridge. We weren't going to go to the bridge, and he actually started singing the bridge that night. So it was just a moment, you know, just one of those momentary things. And it was, but the band was, you know, I think I remember that we just went with it because I said, okay, he's doing the bridge, big freaking deal, you know. Right. Oh, and the next time he said, okay, yeah, I screwed up, you know, cut it out. So, you know, but that's like Matt said, that's a very, very rare.
Hey, Matt, question for you. I don't know if I've ever heard you mention this, like, well, transitioning from the Revolution to this new Sign of Times band, and you being like the pretty much only one from the Revolution to carry over, was there any sort of, I don't know, pushback or conversation from the other Revolution band members to like, wow, you staying with him, or like, or they were like, it's good luck?
They were totally, you know, understanding of the fact that I was under contract still to Prince, and how disappointed they knew how disappointed I was that Prince was splitting the group up, of course. And at the time that the breakup happened, I did my darndest to convince him not to do that. But of course, you know, when he sets his mind to something, nobody can, you know, convince him. So that was that. And then I just expressed my, you know, disappointment and love for the other people leaving. And that's all I could do. You know, I mean, it was rough. It was rough, but you know, the transitioning to the other people was fine. I enjoyed everybody just as much, and they're all great people.
You would never. No one would ever not want to be in a band with Bonnie Boyer.
Yeah,
salute to Bonnie.
Definitely, yeah. She's a colorful, great character.
Aside from doing everything, and great singer that she was, because she brought a level of singing to the band that maybe he hadn't quite, you know, as a background singer. Yep. And that was something that Prince took a lot of advantage of, rightly so. Did everything that she needed to do as a keyboard player, but Bonnie was just a wonderful person.
Yeah.
Bonnie had that she had a sense of humor, and she wasn't afraid of anybody or anything. And she would she had a laugh that was infectious.
Oh yeah.
And when Bonnie started to laugh, everybody laughed, even if you didn't have a clue as to what she was laughing about. You know, she was like that. So
you know. She could do stand-up. We could do stand-up.
We just lost her way too soon. She's just a one of a kind, beautiful soul.
Yeah.
Real quick, then, it's, you know, and salute to Bonnie. Can you guys also like, what did because I look at like Miko, man, and I know he's mentioned earlier in some of the other panels, and his guitar playing to me is just like ridiculous, like funky motherfucker.
After Wendy had left the band, you know. I love the fact that we had two full-time guitar players, when Wendy and Miko were in the band together, because interestingly on the parade gigs, Prince didn't play guitar hardly at all on that show. The only time he was playing guitar if we did Purple Rain, and I don't even think we were doing that every night.
No.
So after Wendy left, it was now Miko was basically, you know, the
main rhythm player. Yeah.
Miko for me was the rock of that band. You know, in the monitors or whatever, is that aside from having the horns up there where we needed them and Prince's vocal, I always liked having Miko's guitar. Miko was the rock of that band. Yeah, he is under remarked, and people need to understand. He
I agree.
is a world-class rhythm guitar player.
Great player.
Yeah,
really good. And he's a decent lead player too. Tasteful lead player.
Yep.
Yeah.
It almost looks like in that part when Miles comes up some of the time, it's almost like he's kind of following or playing with Miko. It almost seems like he almost stands in front of him and just vibing with him. And I was like, okay.
Miles loved guitar players. He loved that. That's
he did that with his guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the guitar players in that band that Miles had in the mid-70s was Reggie Lucas, who was like just one of the greatest rhythm guitar players in the world. And then he had that character Pete Cosey, who from Chicago, who was just like oh my God, tremendous player. Yeah.
Awesome.
So since we talked about Miko, I can't do this and not talk about Levi, because Levi is my favorite bass player of Prince's, even though Brown Mark is incredible. I mean, I love Brown. I mean, incredible. But it's something about Levi's bass playing that I really love.
Yeah. I mean, look, you could talk about all of them, from Mark Brown to Levi to Sonny Thompson. Oh my God. And Rhonda. Oh my God.
They're all tremendous players. They all bring their own style to the table. They're all are original players. They all have their own vibe, of course, like we all do. Everybody has their thing that they do.
That like Miles is what distinguished Prince as a band leader, because whomever he was going to have, he was looking at what does this person bring to my music that the other person didn't. Not that the last person didn't have value, because they did, but it's like, Prince is somebody that should have the ability to have a new band every day if he wants one. Is Prince. All he has to do is put out a casting call, and musicians from all over the world are going to come. So for him, it's a buyer's market. Exactly. Why shouldn't he take advantage of it and said, okay, everybody in this band was great, but that's not what time it is for me. I'm getting up today to see what this person can bring to me that I've never had in my music before. And that's what, that I think is one of the most significant similarities between him and Miles.
They brought salute to Andre Simone. We act like we're not going to mention Andre. Shout out.
Andre Simone. They're saying we got to talk about, just mention Andre Simone, who was a phenomenal bass player. Of course, we love Andre, no doubt. So we're getting really close to the end. I want to be mindful of your time. It's almost 8 o'clock, but I do want to ask one last question, and it's selfish because I organized this, so I'm going to ask it. So LoveSexy is my favorite Prince tour. I saw 2 nights in Atlanta in the Omni in the Round, but I know that tour was super difficult to rehearse for, just because of the stage setup and the hydraulics and what have you. So was it much more tedious to rehearse that tour compared to Sign of the Times?
Yeah, a little more, don't you think, Eric? It was more detailed, the tech rehearsal. I mean, dress rehearsal.
Remember what nightmare that we had on the LoveSexy tour? Because, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. We really have to ask Roy Bennett about this. But what I remember is that Roy Bennett, who was the production designer on all these tours, and you cannot talk about these tours without talking about Leroy Bennett.
Yeah,
he was like the other member of the band. I mean, literally, for what he brought. There was a nightmare in the production rehearsals of a problem that turned out to be an electrical interference between the lights that were being used on the stage and all of the wireless microphone systems. And it took several days for them to figure that out. And we were late into production rehearsals because the stage was late getting to Minneapolis, because Prince was always making changes and everything. So what should have been like a 3-week production rehearsal ended up like being barely 2 weeks. So we were behind the curve. And for the first 4 or 5 days, the entire sound system was crapping out during the rehearsals. And no one could figure out what was finally, it was determined that there was a problem with these lights that Roy was using, from what I recall. Thankfully, Roy was able to get these lights out quick and get the other ones back in that he had been using before. But he had to reprogram everything that he had been doing over a 4 or 5 day period, he had to reprogram everything that he'd done in like in a day.
I remember that.
This was a rare time when Prince pulled everybody in the band aside and said, Roy's going to have a rough day. My suggestion is that we all, out of his way. Having gotten through that, I got to tell you that that show technically went on without a hitch. The crew on that was absolutely phenomenal. That was a stage and a set that literally was given somewhere between 10 to 15 hours to have to sit up every time we played that show.
Oh, yeah. It was insane. That was the most technically demanding stage setup of anything to date for any touring artist.
Yeah. It was Prince and Roy came up with on that was absolutely nothing short of.
But to bring back the one other part about this stage early on when they were brought it in for the initial rehearsals, Prince wanted a waterfall. Coming off of the front of it. Literally. I mean, of course, and then the famous Thunderbird car on the track that goes around and all that. But the waterfall, the first day they tried it,
leaked everywhere. And the thing is all the power amps for the entire PA were right behind the waterfall.
The waterfall under the stage.
And the guy comes in who says, "Oh no, it's not going to leak. It's fail-proof." Turned it on. The water was going everywhere, and that's when our production manager Jeff Mason, his name is Jeff Mason, went to Prince and said, "Okay, Prince, you got a choice. You can have a crew, or you can have your waterfall. You can't have both." So Prince dejectedly, "All right, lose the waterfall."
Oh, jeez. Yeah,
I would have had a waterfall going. Oh man!
And by the way, that T-Bird was modeled after Prince's father's 65 white T-Bird. It was the same thing, but this was a mock-up in fiberglass, and it was smaller than an actual T-Bird, and it was on a special lift that went around the track. Anyway,
they had to assemble that and disassemble that every night.
Right.
It was really. It was custom made by a company that makes amusement park rides.
Right.
Wow.
I remember that.
I think I remember. I mean, take this a grain of salt, but that supposedly I was told, if I remember, that just that cost about $250,000.
Yeah. $250,000 just for that, just for the car and the track.
Wow.
And then, and in those days, think about it, what that'd be worth today. I mean, and then there's one other thing I'm just going to say about the Purple Rain tour, the clawfoot bathtub that he gets in with the fiber optic shower strands coming out and all that. The first day that they tried to use that tub in dress rehearsal, it wasn't nailed down on the hydraulic lift, and it went over backwards with him sitting in it, like, clawfoot old tub, and it literally flipped over and went down about 25, 30 feet to the floor with him in it. And he got bruised up pretty good. And this was literally 2 weeks before the tour, and we all just went, "Oh!" And oh my God, don't touch him. What if he broke? So, it's like, it was horrible.
Yeah. You all see cartoon, money flying away, flying all shit.
We weren't thinking about that, Eric. We were thinking about him.
I was going to ask,
Prince.
Yeah, and so you guys were still on time in terms of the tour? It was not postponed or anything?
Nothing got postponed.
He was okay. Thankfully, he was good to go. Yeah.
So those are the kind of mishaps that take place in these.
Wow. Needless to say, the next day that thing was firmly secured.
Oh yeah. So we call this, it's like it's very Spinal Tap-ish, some of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
It's totally, can be like that.
I remember at the LoveSexy symposium, Kat mentioned that, particularly on the LoveSexy tour, because it seems like parts of the stage would rise and fall, that she almost had an incident, where her foot or something almost got caught, and I just can't imagine.
Oh, I'm sure those things. Yeah.
We were always worried about something happening like that in the dark or something in the middle of the show, somebody not being quite in place in time, and the hydraulic thing comes up and does something. It was scary.
Yeah, there was hardly any real estate on that stage that didn't move in one direction or another.
Yeah. So you had to be really on point and remember your.
Needless to say, there was glow tape on every corner, every step around, because when the lights were down, that's all we depended on.
Yeah, you couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
And we traveled, Eric and I traveled the whole stage around that show, from the left side to the right side to the front to the back, and
and when you see it, and when you see it now, it's still ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
It's still way ahead of its time, except for now you would have, gigantic LED screens everywhere too, probably doing graphics and all that. And of course, Roy Bennett's job on the Paul McCartney tour with the screens is just unbelievable. I don't know if you ever saw
No, I didn't see that.
I did. I was able to attend one of those. It was unbelievable. Tremendous.
And if we talk about Roy, we should also mention quickly Rob Colby. Cubby Colby was the house engineer on all of those gigs.
Yep. One of the greatest, best sound men in the biz.
Yeah, I mean, both Roy and I mean, Roy, these are the guys that went on. Cubby was the house sound engineer for that huge concert that was done on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial during Obama's administration. One of those, that was. So, I mean,
amongst many others, you name some of the biggest artists, and
I mean, both Roy and Cubby are like, the AAA plus guys in their field, and we were extraordinarily fortunate that was the level of the crew that we have during those
exactly.
Years. Those guys were, I mean, if you think of whatever hours that we put in was nothing compared to what those guys put in.
Wow. Very true.
Wow. Well, I'm very conscientious of time, and I just want to thank you for your time. I really do appreciate you guys taking time out, particularly Dr. Fink, because you've joined us twice today, and I really appreciate it. Bliss, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem. Loved it.
Yes. Thank you so much. It means the world to me that you guys joined us tonight to talk a little bit about Sign the Times. And
let's be with all of you. Matt, Bliss, I owe you a phone call. We need to catch up on a lot of stuff. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's great to see your face, Matt.
Yeah, likewise.
Really. Yeah, I mean, I saw you a few years ago, but still, anytime I can see you, it's great to see you again. It's nice
to be in the video with you guys. I think this is the first time I've ever been on with both of you. Very cool.
Thanks. Yeah, and Michael.
Thank you for D'Angelo putting it together.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Salute to D'Angelo, man.
Thank you. Thank you. So I just want to say thank you to everybody who took time out of their day today to actually watch. I know some of you have been with us all day. We've been going since noon, and I really, really appreciate that you've been with me so long. Next year, so this was not a symposium. This was a celebration to celebrate the Super Deluxe box set for Sign the Times. And next year, we're going to have a symposium, a 3-day symposium to celebrate 40 years of controversy.
Oh, wow.
Yes, 30 years of Diamonds and Pearls and 20 years of the Rainbow Children. I could not choose between those three, so we're doing 3 days.
By the way, I was at the premiere of Rainbow Children at Paisley Park. For the listening party. I was there for that.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's going to be the next.
Great album.
Yes, fantastic. It's one of my favorites. And actually, Controversy is my favorite Prince album. So I couldn't choose between the two. So I was like, we're going to have to do them all. So thank you guys so much. Have a great
day.
Thank you. Waterfall.
Thank you. See you later, guys.
Take care.
Working like a job.